Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz, and along with me, as always, my esteemed colleague, Dr. Joe Hamlett. How are you doing today, Dr. Joe?
I'm doing very well, Dr. Dave. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. And for those of you, if this is your first time or your 5,000th time, we'd like to welcome you to the show. This is the Personal Professional Career Development Podcast, and we're here to help you not have to take the long, scenic route like Joe and I have. Today is a very special day because we have with us another colleague of ours, Dr. Tony Simmons, and he's a colleague, and he's got a great perspective on things. How are you doing there this morning, Dr. Tony?
Fun, fun. Thanks for asking there
Yeah.
today.
So, so today's topic is going to be coaching love, not the romantic, that sort of thing. We don't do that. That's not this kind of show. We're talking about agape love, the love of people. So that's our topic for today. We're gonna turn this over to Dr. Tony. Let him give a couple minutes about himself, his background, and then we'll start hearing what he has to say about coaching love. So, how you doing? Let's go, Dr. Tony. Let's get this on. Let's get this going.
All right. Once again, thanks. And yeah, I like this coaching love. I say to know it's a love. I would like to expand on that briefly there. But and that goes back to where I'm from. I grew up in a rural town of Goodwater, Alabama. It was a blue collar town where people had one thing for sure in common. We had love, and I always call it the right nothing, which was values and love. But I matriculated from Goodwater High School in 1985, where I was all-state quarterback and also finished as valedictorian for my class and was honored to have the opportunity to attend college at Austin Peay State University in Clarksville, Tennessee, where I played varsity football and studied robotics with a minor in mathematics and graduated from there. Went off to Navy Officer Candidate School, Newport, Rhode Island, put me on path for a 28-year Navy career, an opportunity to serve my country, and had the chance of steaming around the world 3 times and commanded 3 ships and a destroyer squadron while I was there on active duty, and worked in human resources, which tied into developing people there down at the Navy Bureau of Personnel. Then I had 5 years in Washington, working inside the Pentagon, doing a lot with strategy and trying to look out for the future wealth of the Navy. And afterwards, I retired in 2018 after 28 great years of service. And I working in the defense sector, and I eventually ventured over into the education side, working for the Navy Community College. But once again, I get a chance to help people demonstrate love and coaching and developing people, as I work across 7 partnership institutions with the newly formed Navy Community College. That's what put me here today with this great group.
That's a great
Wow,
background, and that
absolutely.
fits into our the premise of the show, the journeys of not so ordinary people. You don't have to come from, you know, Hollywood elite to be someone. You pick yourself up and grow up someplace that's not particularly special or unique, and pull your boots up and make something of yourself. That's awesome. We love that. So so with that, let's go ahead and let's talk about this topic of coaching love. I could probably use some help in that. So take it away, Dr. Tony. Tell
You
us
know,
about
I
coaching love.
you look at this topic, it's very simple. What I've learned in life is really to keep, the basics, your umbrella, very simple. Coaching love is a topic, but what it really means, what's the underpinning? I gave you a brief synopsis of what I did in life. And some people may think it's like boasting, yeah, you did this, you accomplished that. But no, it really, the big picture is, I talked about the subtopic, just to know is to love. What does that really mean? We look at society. What are some of the challenges we have today? It is people, with stereotypes, not understanding each other. America is a melting pot. Right? So I steamed around the world, as I said, 3 times. I've visited over 65 countries,
Wow.
and throughout those visits, looked at America is known to be more like ethnocentric. We really, really put a lot of stock into where we are. We're a pretty high-end country. Let's just be realistic. So then how do you look at the second and third world countries when you engage them? How do you make them comfortable? How do you reach them? How do you get to know them? we have some really, really strong practices in the Navy, and that's connecting with other countries in order to actually be able to provide and help the people that we engage. And we do a good job there globally as we engage other countries. But I look at this country here, we don't do a good job working across generations, working across different ethnicities and working across different social groups, different educational bases. Just looking at some, we all start at different places in life, okay? And we have different journeys and different paths. A lot of stuff is based on resources. My upbringing, it was more like rural. I was not as advanced as maybe some of the kids that went through the higher end high schools, went through the Ivy League universities. I was a college athlete. I was not exposed academically, but the Navy held all of us officers to the same standards. So I had to leverage those opportunities by having advanced education. Navy had a professional reading list. I continuously read to keep up to pace myself. I never felt like I was disadvantaged. And what all that means is at the end of the day, you have to know people in order to relate to them. So coaching love is it's a gap we have in life as how do we really, really iron out the differences. And that's by getting to know based on whatever ground, whatever someone, has to offer there and respect people where they are, meet people halfway. And halfway is not always the same distance. If you got someone that came from lesser resources, maybe you have to go a little further to reach that person. But once you reach that person and get to know that person, there's a chance that, that you would establish common threads there. And within those common threads, we do have love. And that's why people say we got in-group, out-group favoritism. So why do we don't have inter-group, relationships? Why can't we zero out those differences? And you do that by getting to know someone and meeting them where they are on their basis. So that's the really overarching concept of coaching love. And I think, it's a gap we have in this country today. And that's what creates a lot of the challenges because we don't know each other. So we don't express love and demonstrate love to each other.
You said a lot of great things, and that your intro to coaching love, and the one thing I always talk about, when I'm relating to people is just that meeting them where they are. And initially you said meeting them halfway, and sometimes it does take you going a little bit further. So it really comes down to, you said this too, about the relationship, building relationship, getting to know that person. And I've never really called it coaching love, but you're right, that's really what it is, getting to know that person at a personal level, not just what type of capabilities. If you're a leader, you're leading a group of people, and you're trying to get to know what their skills or capabilities are. It's beyond just, again, getting to know what they can do for you, but rather what's important to them, what motivates them, what inspires them, getting to know the real them. And so that just resonated with me totally, because that is my philosophy as well, that you have to get to know people before you can get anything out of them. They have to know that you care about them, that you really support them, you really believe in them. And so everything you just said, but I also like the idea you talked about. You had a unique perspective, being able to go around the world several times and meeting people from different environments, and I think that's also helpful, because you're only going to be able to relate to things that you see regularly, right? So if we grow up in a small community, we never go out, out of that state, out of that community, then we're going to be very limited on our view of, what's out there. And so that was also eye opening for me as well. Just going to different places, seeing how other people live, seeing how other people, um, the what they grew up with. I had a lot of friends that were not from, United States, and so to hear their stories and to hear the things the challenges they faced, that again helped me to open my perspective to the potential things out there. Even if I didn't know someone from a particular country, I can still um, empathize, because I again, I do want to know the challenges they face, how I can interact with them, how I can help them. So yeah, you unpacked a lot of things that, like Dave said earlier, that we touch on, that people need to know. And again, I never would have called it coaching love, but you're right, that's really what it is. So
Yeah,
Thanks
and
for that intro.
I really like how you touched upon understanding other people's journeys, and that's really one of the biggest premises of this show is understanding people and their journey. Where did they start? Where did they come from? How did they get to where they are now? Because Joe's said it so many times, we can give you the blueprint, we can give you the directions, but the results are probably going to be different because of your circumstances. We can give you some ideas and some guidance, but there is no one blueprint that fits everybody. So when you touched on that, understanding people's journeys, that's, oh my God, that's so spot on. I love that you brought that in. So tell us a little bit more.
I really appreciate it. I was just listening to Dr. Joe's background there, growing up in Kansas City and, and as well as yourself there, you guys went through the enlisted ranks, which is different than me going, through the officer ranks from day one, but we were all doctors, so
Right.
we still
Right.
on common grounds there. So
Yep.
and that's the beauty of it, where you can't always, just stereotype people, tie them into a
Yeah.
certain situation or status in life. We all have equal, potential, when we open our minds. But I'm gonna use a couple tools I've used here just to simplify. And this has come from my doctoral scholarship. I just felt I went to Regent University for a reason. I had some weaknesses in my life, as we all do sometimes as people, right? No
Mhm.
matter, all the glamour things we talk about, we have to continuously self-assess and get better. That's what the journey is all about. And as
Yeah.
you said, that's what life offers us there. So I went to Regent in order to build myself, from a Christianity perspective there. And also I went as well to one of the challenging institution that I could take my 20 years of Navy experience and sort of codified, and tied into academia, a lot of research-based stuff. And now I'm just constantly researching because I consider myself what we call a filial math. And that's what I think I have in common with you there, Dr. Joe. You see, just have this eagerness to just continuously learn, So I looked at that just a lifelong learner, which is actually being a filial math. And and even to this day, even after having my doctorate, I'm just constantly reading. I'm just off to this drum beat. I think it's a lifelong drum beat, but that ties into I do a lot in with emotional intelligence because I look at once again gaps in the world.
Mhm.
You compare EI, emotional intelligence, to IQ, which is competency, and we're in an environment now where it's really ties into those domains of emotional intelligence. And I studied at Harvard Business Review, and we call those social, it's a self awareness. Then we go into self management and then have social awareness, which was the old way of saying empathy. And you mentioned empathizing earlier. Then the last piece is social interaction. That's the piece that really, really, really uh, captures where I am and how I put all those pieces together and how do we get after these real strong problems that we'll face, throughout life. It ain't really about, how you see things, from your perspective. How do you look at it from the other person's perspective? And now how do we get to that? And how do we appreciate the person's
Mhm.
perspective? So in my book is called Championing Organizational Wellness that I pretty much captured my doctoral scholarship and my 20 years of Navy experience. And I tied in these my three chapters where I find my ways of missing my means is really you got to do self-assessments there. You got to navigate your blind spots. It's like the want self, that people have a tendency to be vice the off self, who you ought to be. What's the God given purpose that you have in life, your purposefulness
Mhm.
as you go forward. So how do you navigate those blind spots? That's the second chapter after you do the self-assessment. Then the third chapter is the coaching conversation. And that's when you sit down, there's four parts. You got to ask open-ended questions. You got to do intuitive listening, let some people draw out their own introspective. And once they do that, you let them design their path forward. Then it's your job to support them, and you got to suspend judgment as you do that. So those are my three powerful chapters where I actually put the vehicle that I actually implement in order to champion this process of coaching love there. And like I said, it starts with self. And whether you go through your Myers-Briggs personality test, doesn't matter. Whichever one of those tools you use out there, your 12 gifts and your chapter in your Romans chapter 12 there, in your Romans chapter 12 gifts, spiritual gifts, whatever it takes, you really have to self-assess and it's talk is cheap. You got to walk the walk. So and those are some tools that I like to employ there as I speak to this whole process.
Well, again, you've hit everything. We talk about on this podcast
Yeah.
often. The self reflection that's we try and mention that in almost every podcast episode, just because you can't move forward until you realize where you are, recognize where you are, and accept where you are. And so yeah, that's the first piece you have to kind of start with, understanding who you are, where you are, and again, being open comes from that. Once you again figure out, okay, I don't know enough about this, I need to learn about that. And that, you touched on it. That's why for me, I will commit to being a lifelong learner, just because to advance, to make myself better, I need to understand what I need to do to get there. And that's kind of what we talk about, even with people setting goals. You can set that goal way out there, um, but even if you're doing just a little bit to get there, you are advancing, you are improving. So for me, that's why I just continue to stay focused on what's next. Not that I'm discounting where I'm at today, but the idea that I do these things, I'm going to get there. It's gonna lead me down this path, and that continuous journey. Me and Dave talk about this all the time too. For us, being on this podcast is part of that journey. We're still, we don't come here expecting to have all these answers, and then you walk away and you're going to be this golden everything you need to get you going. But the idea that me and Dave are learning on this podcast, that our journeys are together and separate, but just continuing down this path. You touched on it too, Dr. Tony, where you said, you got out of the military, did your thing, and then it led to you even being on this podcast. And that's what the way I look at it, that all the things we're doing gets us to some level wherever that is. And to me, the best thing you can do is kind of identify those things. And you can't identify those things until you start to really look internal, figure out who you are. So
Yeah, yeah. And I'm going to piggyback off what Joe said. That critical self-reflection is so important because that's the only way you're going to start to be able to understand others. And my mind is paraphrasing what you just said there, Dr. Tony, is you have to understand yourself before you can understand others. And I think that's a great way to paraphrase it, because so many people out there only doing one of those pieces, and they don't realize that they have to have both of them for it to really work effectively.
No, I appreciate that. And like I said, this podcast is this opportunity. I've done, several podcasts, but I like this one. I like the approach here because it's about learning development. It's about getting the right messaging out, to society, to our people, to our real valuable stuff. And as I look, we all taught to do research from, and our doctors, we know that. And it's just not a lot of research-based stuff out there. I recall when instructors was always like, well, I need some different perspectives. I want some stuff from books. I want it from peer-reviewed articles. I want journalists. I was like, come on, it's just why all this churn? But now I get it, and you look at the plethora of stuff in the social world out there. And we talk, how do we make a difference? How do we share, our learning and stuff? And we said pretty much having a pretty strong, high-end research-based, conversation that's based on academics and hands-on experience. And I think that's what really, make this whole platform here really valuable. And that's why I really embrace it. And I'm really honored, for the opportunity, to be here before you all. So that takes me to talk to as we grow and some of the pieces for his development and coaching love. It's looking at generational differences now. So we have to learn and identify, with the new generation. We all have something to offer. We can't always look at it. Well, it was done this way in my era in life.
yeah,
No, now we have to evolve. We talk about the instant gratification of the younger generation. There's nothing wrong with that because they exude
right,
confidence a lot sooner. You all have grandkids there and kids, and they are different than our generation. I have
yeah,
kids, and they are different. I don't know how to relate to them. I can't take the approach that my parents
yeah,
took with me. It doesn't
absolutely.
work.
No,
So and so I study that and I read it and I said they don't want to be lectured to. They're forward thinkers. They're independent learners. They're mostly learning through the virtual world, through computers.
yeah,
You know, unlike what we learn, So we got to respect that. They're very, like I said, independent thinkers. So you got to be careful not to offend them and let them talk and just lead by example. It's just some things I just learned. Had I not done that research and not self-reflected, I didn't look at my kids and look at their generation and say how what they don't have. I said, what do I need to do
Mm.
to adapt in order to best relate to them so they can be the
Absolutely.
people that they want to be in life? Because we're in a world where they don't deal with uncertainty the way we deal with uncertainty. They are on the edge. Sometimes they may look at it as anxiety because they're not comfortable there. So we have to help them turn that uncertainty into opportunities, and lean forward. So, and that's why I think it's so important to self-reflect, to self-assess, and to continue to grow so that we can continue to be viable and good assets, to our kids and grandkids and society writ large.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You touched on again the meeting them where they are.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we have to do, and then like you also said, that may entail that you have to learn more or learn a different approach or different things. Because you're right, the way my parents raised me and my wife is totally different than the way we raised our kids. Because you're right, it would not have worked. We had to adapt. We had to and now, like you say, this I've got grandkids, and so um, I can't. We can't interact with them the way that my grandparents interacted with me. So just again, meeting people where they are, because you're right, they don't view things the same way we do. So that whole idea of do as I say has not worked in a lot of
Yeah.
years. And so if you are not, advancing or improving yourself, then you're going to be left behind. And we talk about that all the time, helping people to understand the way you've done things in the past probably is not going to work in the future because all the advances in technology, just again, the different generations view things differently. So you're going to be left in back way back in in an age that no longer exists, and you won't nobody will be able to resemble it. So yeah, that's absolutely it.
Yeah. And you started making me reflect as you were talking, and especially about the generational thing. And
Yeah.
one of my biggest proponents and mentors was retired Army Colonel Alan Landry. And several years ago, when my son was challenging me with his teenage attitudinal years, I'll say, he, I was I was talking to Al, and he's like, Dave, I've struggled with that too. But I'm going to tell you something that's very important. Their journey is not your journey, so you have to understand their journey and their generation. And I thought that was one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten, because to your point, each generation is just different enough that, we have to understand them both ways. And like my son, he's awesome and I love him. But there was a time when I did not understand half the things that he was saying. I was like, "What? That doesn't make any sense." And he's like, "Dad, it's easy. It's like this. How can you not understand that?" And I'm like, wow, now I'm starting to feel awkward here because I have a DR with my name and I'm feeling awkward. So, and I've seen that happen in the workplace where, like to your point, Dr. Tony, the younger generations have a skill set that we don't have that we need to understand, and vice versa. We have a skill set that they don't understand. And that's part of that generational, it's also part of the ethno-geo aspect of communication and understanding those around you. And that to me is what your coaching love is, that agape love, loving and understanding and respecting each other. It doesn't mean you have to be besties and go out and have dinner and play sports and all that stuff together, but you have to at least understand where other people are coming from and acknowledge and respect that, because to your point, we all have our own individual journeys. As similar as they might be, they're not the same.
Yeah, that's the whole social awareness piece that I was talking about, which is so we normally use the term empathy, which is a powerful term now.
Mhm.
As I get through my nuggets, it's just one powerful one that I've used throughout. I started when I was a department head back in 1997 in the Navy as we go through the structure. And I was fortunate to get command in 99 when I was a senior lieutenant in the Navy, which would be a captain, Air Force vernacular. And So I took these this main thing I called it. It's the four pillars. It's called accountability, responsibility, loyalty, trust. Now, what does that really mean? For us linking to people and connecting with people and getting to know people. First, you responsible. That's the one direction. When you're young, you're responsible to your seniors, and accountability is bi-directional. Not only are you accountable for the things you're responsible for, also you have to hold the people that seem to you accountable, make sure they
Mhm.
set you up for success, and make sure they're, demonstrating, exhibiting good leadership. And other was trust, and which I also look at trust as being bi-directional. Sometimes leaders say, well, I don't trust that sailor. And then as a captain of a ship, I say, if I'm trying to dock the ship, it's just as important, for that sailor that's over on that fantail of the ship to he trusts I'm gonna get the ship close enough so he don't put himself in danger as he try to tie the ship to the dock, as this is me to trust that he's going to get the line over when I get the ship
Mhm.
closer. So it's about direction. Then the last one is loyalty. Sometimes people just abuse position, they abuse authority. You got to be loyal to those people that in charge of. You just got to do right by them and understanding them and making them feel like that, you have best interest in who they really are. So I look at those four pillars, and I've used those pillars since 1997 as a Navy leader, and I talked to every guy that was I was involved or was I had any responsibility to about those four pillars there. But the one I like to really anchor on for his coaching love is trust. And that's when we have to really bring everything full circle. What's transparency? You read a lot of the stuff we read out here today, just touching on the space and stuff. Is a lot of what the challenge that we face in life. But we don't we mix the big piece there. Trust and transparency,
Yeah.
they're tied hand in hand. But how do you become transparent? That's the key. How do you do it? I think it goes into self-assurance. Sometimes you can't keep stuff close to your vest. And the more responsibilities you get, the more senior you become in life, the more you have to be transparent, the more you have to build trust. But you can't do that if you don't identify with your weaknesses as a person, understand what sparks of what what underscores your behaviors as people. So that's just one area I think as a whole, as a country, as a culture, in order to coach love and get to know people, we have to figure out ways, how do we develop that trust? And it can't just be from your perspective. But I just really think it's often misconstrued that trust is all about how a senior person feel about their junior personnel or the people that they in charge. It's a bi-directional responsibility. And I just think that's one we really, really have to get our head around.
Yeah. So we've got about 2 minutes left. Dr. Anthony or Dr. Tony, is there anything that what would you like to leave our audience with? Is there anything, what would you like to leave our audience with?
The key is it's all about coaching love, and I like to take my experience, and I like to be able to locate all these tools and resources. I'm going to continue to do research. I like them to visit me at my site at www.six, spell it out, SIXTHGEAR consulting, consulting.com. And also, I have a book out there which is highlighted on the website, which is Championing the Organization Wellness. And there's all the tools and the things I've talked to here today are actually resident, in that book there. But and I just want people to really respect each other for who they are and just figure out how do we get there and understand the difference between a mentor and a model. A model is what you do to improve yourself and set that right example. So as I mentioned earlier, how the young generation can look at that, and a mentor is someone who's really it's about what they can do for other people, and they always want someone to maybe act based on what they tell them, not what they do. So let's try to be models more so than mentors.
Dr. Joe, what are your final thoughts?
No, I think Dr. Tony introduced a lot of things, and again, a lot of things we cover. But it was for me, it was a pleasure hearing how he's put that together as a framework to help those individuals out there that are trying to advance, that are trying to understand other people. I think I'm actually going to probably get your book just so I can
Right.
make sure I'm doing the right things as well. Because again, I know there's a lot of things overlap, but just the way you framed it, I think that might help me as well. But it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, and again, thanks for providing your wisdom and your knowledge that you've learned over the years and now putting into practice. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Thank you for the platform.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm just going to say, Dr. Tony, thanks for joining us on this episode. We really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to join us and share your experience and your journey with us. We'll make sure that your information is in the description for this
Absolutely.
podcast.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that you'd like to have added in there, just make sure you get it over to us. We'll add it in there. So with that, we'd like to thank our viewers and listeners for joining us on another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, a personal, professional, and career development podcast. And give us some likes, give us some shares, give us some feedback. We have 140 plus free episodes out there. So, there's plenty of time or plenty of viewing opportunities or listening opportunities for you out there. And with that, we want you to keep on being your not so ordinary you.
Thank you.